As you likely know, I have quite a thing for churches. Truth be told, I am fascinated by shrines and synagogues and mosques and mandirs and temples too. I am captivated by the sight of faith translated into bricks and mortar, by the sheer determination it took to raise the classic temples of antiquity and the vaulted cathedrals of the Middle Ages. Places like Stonehenge, Angkor Wat, and Hagia Sophia stand to this day as testaments to faith and the force of will, symbols of devotion carved from stone that were meant to endure. But these sites, of course, are more than buildings, more than the pile of rocks from which they were built. They stand as sacred sites, hallowed through centuries of human longing for life's deepest meaning. And that's why I think that I and so many of us gravitate to such places, such patches of hallowed ground, whether they be half a world away or just around the corner. A few years ago, I dragged Bob through many of the major cathedrals of northern France, willingly. To squeeze in a few stops later in the day, we set out very early to arrive at the Cathedral of Amiens as soon as the doors opened at dawn. Though we have visited countless cathedrals through the years, we've never essentially had one completely to ourselves. Somehow anything that is that big and almost 1,000 years old just seems like it should be shared. But that morning, the caretaker departed after unlocking the doors, and Bob and I were left with this cavernous space to enjoy its vast silence and the morning sun piercing its stained glass. There, in the middle of the nave, lay Amiens' famed labyrinth. In the deep, still quiet of the moment, I could not resist the rare opportunity to walk its angled rings without having to dodge unthinking tourists armed with cameras and selfie sticks. There, in the filtered morning light, I walked my way into a time of meditation, navigating the black and white marble that outlined my path. I simply and slowly walked, breathing in the air of the ages. Reaching the center, it pleased me for a time to stand there in silence. Eventually, a handful of chatty worshipers began to arrive for a morning mass in one of the small chapels beyond the altar. The silence had been broken, and in some ways, the spell too. I was a little annoyed, until I asked myself what right I had to be so selfish, to somehow think I deserved to make this place my own, to forget the dedication of generations of people that had built and rebuilt this magnificent, sacred space. In that moment of insight, I remembered the story of a visitor in France who, some 800 years ago, entered the town of Chartres, where the great cathedral was then under construction. To his surprise, it seemed that nearly everyone in town was engaged with an activity in some way related to the building of this enormous church. The visitor went up to a man who was busy with some large stones. "What are you doing?" he asked. "I'm cutting stones," came the reply. "I am a stonemason." Not far from the stonemason was a man carving some wood. "What are you doing?" "I'm carving wood. I'm a carpenter." Several more people from different trades brought predictably similar answers. The glass blower was blowing glass, the solicitor soliciting donations, the architect planning pillars. Off in the distance was a woman with a large broom, sweeping up sawdust and stone chips and shards of glass, tidying up after the workers who had finished their various tasks for the day. To her went the same question, "What are you doing?" But this time, something was different. The woman stopped sweeping, stood up straight, and turned toward the visitor with a big, broad, proud smile. "Me?" she said. "Why, I am building a cathedral to the glory of God." And so she was, because she understood the higher purpose of her work. In my selfish desire to keep the cathedral to myself that morning, I had forgotten her and so many like her who have toiled since the beginning of time, to build enduring monuments to their faith, places owned not by any one person or even a single generation, but places that today belong to the ages. What moved me most, though, in that moment of clarity and thinking of that woman sweeping the corners of her cathedral was realizing that across all those centuries, I know her. I easily recognize her and the people who have cared for this building. Across so many years, the people who have animated it with life through the work of their hands and their hearts. Now, I fully suspect that many of these people would not say they did it for the glory of God. At least not without an extended debate about the definition of God. But I do know for certain that they gave and give of themselves, like so many of you give of yourselves, to serve the greater good and help build up a monument to the best of our humanity, often right here within these walls. There are, as it turns out, many ways to build a cathedral. Today we say our goodbyes to this building that we have called home for the past 72 years. And in so doing, we acknowledge the debt of gratitude we owe to those who founded this congregation in 1845 and to those who in every generation since have worked for its well-being, cutting stones, blowing glass, and sweeping the floors. These countless acts of love and devotion have created this place and made it what it is today. And they are, in no small part, what will sustain us as we leave this building behind and move into our future. A move that will teach us again the lesson we have learned repeatedly through this pandemic, that we are so much more than the brick and mortar of whatever place that we call home. David Anderson, in his story, Love on the Rocks, tells of the time when someone struck a match and destroyed his church. He says that by the time he got there, the whole sky was lit up orange. Flames had shot through the arched roof of the parish hall like a pyre. He stumbled around the building, finding a clutch of his parishioners huddled out front, where they watched the horrific scene until the fire chief moved them off the property because it was no longer safe. When the roof of the sanctuary collapsed, he stopped comforting his congregants and began to wail himself. When he could cry no more, someone got a chair for him and sat him down. After the fire, everything was different. The staff worked out of the old rectory, and the congregation worshiped across the street in the school gymnasium. Eventually, bulldozers crawled off flatbed trucks and made quick work of everything but the heavy stone walls of the old church. When the demolition crew began piling up little hills of face stone, a friend of the minister, who knew that he had forever been planning to build a deck off his home, suggested that he take a load of the salvage stone to create a terrace instead. The minister knew in an instant that that would be a fitting memorial. A week later, 6 tons of precious stones slid off a truck and into a pile in his backyard. That evening, after dinner, he went out to look at his new rock pile. The stones looked pinkish in the setting sunlight. They were scraped and scarred, and some were covered with soot on one side. But he loved those stones, for he knew that there in a microcosmic heap lay his church. But truth be told, he got more than he bargained for. It turns out that 6 tons of battered and burnt stones require a lot of labor to be transformed into a terrace, requiring of him every bit of sheer doggedness that he could muster. He knew that if he did not love this rubble so much, he would be free of it. But I do, he said, and so I am not. That is the love that we can have for such a place as this. It may look just like bricks and mortar and a fading coat of paint, but this building is much more than its elements because of those of us who have called it home. Love is the only reason that explains why we have given to it a measure of our devotion, our resources, and our lives. It and the community it holds has been a cradle for our common dreams. But again, as we move from this place, we will be reminded that what we know as First Unitarian, this community of communities, this web of relationships, is and always has been about so much more than our building. In some religious traditions, there is a practice of deconsecrating a house of worship when the building has outlived its useful life or when the congregation is moving on for whatever reason. It's said that these buildings, these sacred places, are returned to profane use. As I have thought about this moment, and I will say with our planning for this long-awaited day having taken some 15 years, I've had plenty of time to think about it, actually. I reject that notion that this ground, this place, this home that has been hallowed by our presence across so many years somehow needs to be rendered no longer sacred. If anything, with our commitment to the interconnected web of being, our faith reminds us that everywhere is sacred. Or in the words of Wendell Berry, that there are only sacred places and desecrated places. Our work is to see the sacred in all things, to uncover it and uphold it, to savor it and to celebrate it. To render something sacred is merely to recognize what is already true, what is already there. Friends, there are indeed many ways to build a cathedral or a temple, and we in this time and place are given the awesome privilege of taking up our trades and honing our skills to fashion from wood and stone, from dream and sacrifice, the new and enduring monument to our faith and a testament to the life that ever stirs within us and among us. While we are indeed about the work of literally building a new house of worship, even more, we are called in this moment to move forward in faith to build up the beloved community within and beyond whatever walls that we will come to call home. May that, more than anything, be what endures from our efforts. May the call of love and the call of life ever lead us to build up a better world. Will you join me now in a moment of blessing? Spirit of life, on this day and every day when we commit ourselves anew to the future of this congregation, let us recall with gratitude those who by the labor of their hands and their hearts worked to make this a house of peace for all people. For it is to this sacred place, this community of memory and hope, that we have brought the joys and the sorrows of our lives, knowing that here we would find compassion, courage, and conviction. For it is to this place we have come to renew our faith in the world, in one another, and even ourselves, in the knowledge that we will be sent from here to take up the work of love and justice that is ours to do. As we move into our future as a congregation, may we remain ever true in our care for one another, for our temple to the Spirit of life is only as strong as the foundations of our love and our commitment to each other. Amen.